Growing up, I was always the quiet one. Not shy, just careful. I knew early on that words could be used as weapons. And in my house, they often were. Sarcasm wasn't just humor, it was a shield. Passive-aggressive jabs weren't jokes, they were ways of cutting deeper without leaving a visible wound. And in the middle of it all was me soaking in every word, every tone, every sigh and glance like a sponge. My name is Aisha. I'm the middle child in a family that never quite figured out how to love gently. My older brother, Hamza, was the golden boy. Everything he touched turned to gold in my parents' eyes. Even when he got caught sneaking out, or failed an exam, or was caught yelling at a teacher, he was just going through a phase. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Fariha, was the delicate flower, always protected, always believed, always cherished. And me? I was dramatic, sensitive, overly emotional, too intense. That was the label slapped on me whenever I cried hard, felt deeply, or spoke honestly. Here we go again, my father would mutter. Stop exaggerating. My mother would snap. You always make a mountain out of a molehill. So I learned not to talk. I stopped sharing things. I buried the hurt deep, behind practiced smiles and polite nods. But it had to go somewhere, so I started writing. My journal became my confessional. It held everything I couldn't say out loud. The betrayals, the loneliness, the subtle cruelties, the nights I lay in bed, wondering if I was the problem, if I was truly too much. It was a cheap, spiral notebook at first, then a leather-bound diary I saved up for with birthday money. I wrote in it every day, not for anyone else, just for me. Because somewhere inside, I knew, if I didn't pour the pain out, it would consume me. But even that, even my private sanctuary, would eventually be violated. Let me take you back to the night everything started to unravel. It was a Friday. I had just turned 18, but no one really cared. There was no party, no cake, just the usual tension at dinner. Like everyone was forcing themselves to sit still long enough to avoid a fight. I got one happy birthday from my mom in the morning. That was it. After dinner, I went upstairs, locked my door, and opened my journal. I wrote about how invisible I felt, about the way Fariha had rolled her eyes at me during dinner, and how Mom had laughed at one of Hamza's jokes that was clearly about me. It wasn't direct, but I felt it, that familiar sting. The next morning, the journal was gone. I searched everywhere, tore apart my room, under the bed, behind the dresser, in the laundry basket. It was gone. My heart sank. It wasn't just a notebook, it was everything. It was raw, unfiltered, vulnerable truth. I wrote about things no one knew, things I hadn't told anyone, not even my best friend. Secrets, traumas, and worse, I wrote about them, my family. The way they treated me, the things they said when they thought I wasn't listening, the way their love felt like obligation, not affection. I knew instantly someone had taken it. I confronted Fariha first. She blinked at me innocently, swearing up and down she hadn't seen it. Why would I read your whiny nonsense? She said with a scoff. You act like your life is so hard. God, Aisha, you're always so dramatic. There it was again. I didn't ask Hamza. He wouldn't admit to anything unless he was caught red-handed. So I asked Mom. She didn't even try to hide it. Yes, I read it, she said calmly, like she had every right. You left it lying out, and I got curious. I was worried about you. My blood went cold. You read it. My voice cracked. She shrugged. A lot of it was just exaggeration. I don't know where you get this martyr complex from. Honestly, you should be ashamed of how you talk about your family. I felt like I was going to throw up. I could barely form words. That was private, Mom. That wasn't for you. Then maybe don't write such ugly things about the people who love you. She snapped. Honestly, you sound ungrateful. That word, ungrateful. Another classic. I ran to my room and slammed the door so hard a photo fell off the wall. I collapsed onto my bed, shaking. I felt violated, like someone had taken my skin off and thrown it in the dirt. I didn't come out of my room for the rest of the weekend. By Monday, I noticed something else. People in the house were acting strange. Fariha wasn't just her usual bratty self, she was full-on icy. Hamza avoided eye contact. Dad wasn't talking to me at all. I knew what had happened. She told them. She read my journal, and then she shared it. My heart broke in a new way. The one place I'd let myself be honest, my only safe space, was now being used as a weapon against me. For the next few days, the air in the house was thick with tension. I was treated like a traitor. My father finally broke his silence at dinner one night. You think we're all monsters? He said coldly. Is that it? I didn't answer. What could I say? You sit there judging everyone, but you don't lift a finger to help. You're just a child playing the victim. My hands trembled in my lap. I looked down at my plate. I couldn't eat. Maybe if you didn't isolate yourself all the time, you wouldn't feel so unseen. Hamza added with their quotes. I snapped. You made me isolate, I said, louder than I meant to. You all act like I'm the problem, like I'm just some overly emotional freak. But maybe, just maybe, it's because I've been drowning in this house my whole life, and no one even noticed. Double quote silence. Mom stood up, grabbed her plate, and walked away. No one followed her. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. But somewhere inside me, something else stirred too. A tiny spark. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just being dramatic. I was hurt, and that pain was real, whether they acknowledged it or not. So, I started writing again, but this time digitally. Password protected, cloud backed, safe. I wrote everything. Every word they said. Every manipulation. Every moment of emotional whiplash. Not for revenge, but because I needed proof. Proof for myself that what I was feeling was real. But life, as always, had other plans. One afternoon, my uncle and aunt came over for tea. They were my dad's elder brother, and his wife, more traditional, more formal, but oddly warm toward me. I usually stayed in my room when they visited, but this time, I lingered downstairs. Something about the way Mom smiled so widely when they arrived put me on edge. I heard snippets, whispers, mentions of concerns about Aisha's mental state. All these dark thoughts. She's always isolating. I froze. She was telling them. She was painting me as unstable. I walked into the room, my heart pounding. Are you talking about me? Everyone went silent. My mom, caught off guard, tried to recover. We're just worried, Beta. You've been so distant, and then that journal. So now I'm mentally ill because I wrote how I felt, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. We just think maybe you need help, Dad added. You mean I'm inconvenient, I said. You mean you don't want to deal with the fact that you hurt me? More silence. My aunt looked at me, then really looked at me. What exactly was in the journal, Aisha? I glanced at my mom, who suddenly looked less confident. My lips parted, and I told her. Not everything, but enough. About how I was always compared, always diminished. About the guilt trips, the gaslighting, the loneliness that sat in my chest, like a stone. The way love in this house felt like a performance with rules I never understood. My aunt's face fell. Beta, that's not okay, she said gently. That's not dramatic. That's emotional neglect. My mother stood up. I won't have you poisoning the family against me. I'm not poisoning anyone, I said. You did that the moment you read my journal and treated my pain like a problem to fix, instead of a wound to heal. It was the first time I ever saw my father speechless. That night, after everyone left, my mom didn't speak to me. Neither did my dad. Hamza slammed a door. Fariha muttered something under her breath. But I felt lighter, because finally someone had seen me, and this was just the beginning. After that night with my aunt and uncle, something inside me shifted. I had spent most of my life tiptoeing through my own house, trying not to provoke, not to disappoint, not to feel too much. But after being heard, really heard for the first time, I couldn't go back to silence. The next morning was eerily quiet. No one looked me in the eye. Fariha didn't roll her eyes at breakfast, which was unusual in itself. Hamza had already left for his internship, and Mom was scrolling on her phone like she hadn't spent the night fuming. Dad pretended to read the newspaper, but I could see his knuckles tighten every time he turned the page. I sat at the table, eating toast with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. My mind kept racing. Did they even care how hurt I was? Would they ever admit what they did? Or was I still the villain in the story they were writing in their heads? Later that day, I overheard my mom on the phone with my aunt. She was crying. She twisted everything. Made me sound like a monster. No, I didn't. I told the truth. And deep down, I think she knew it. That's what scared her the most. A few days later, I got a message from my cousin Zara, my aunt's daughter. She was a year older than me, living in Lahore, and we hadn't spoken much before this. I read what you wrote. Mom sent me some pages. I'm so sorry. That wasn't just brave. It was real. And it happened to me too, in different ways. I blinked at the screen. Someone had shared my journal entries. Not as gossip, but as truth. As validation. That message opened a floodgate. Over the next week, I received 5 more messages from other cousins, some close, some barely acquaintances. They all said the same thing. We understand. We've been through it too. The words I had written in pain were now helping others recognize their own wounds. That realization was both beautiful and terrifying, but the peace was short-lived. That weekend, my parents held a family meeting. I came downstairs and found everyone already seated. Mom, Dad, Hamza, and Fariha. The air was thick with tension. Dad gestured to the sofa. Sit. I did. Mom cleared her throat. We need to talk about what you wrote. My chest tightened. Why? You've already read it and judged it. She winced. It's not that simple. What you wrote has consequences, Aisha. There were already consequences, I snapped. You just didn't want to see them. You made us look like abusers, Hamza chimed in. You know what people are saying about our family now. Kala told her whole side. You want to ruin our reputation. I didn't ask her to share anything. I said firmly, and I didn't lie. That's not the point, Fariha asked. You're acting like a victim when you're just attention-seeking. Enough, Dad barked. He turned to me, voice cold. You either apologize and set the record straight, or you can leave this house. My heart stopped. Leave. I echoed. Because I told the truth. Because you're dividing this family. He said, you're turning your private feelings into a public war, and I won't tolerate that under my roof. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't just angry. He was ashamed. Not of what he'd done, but of being exposed. The shame wasn't about me. It was about them. I stood up. No, I said. I won't apologize for surviving. You're being emotional. Again, Mom snapped. No, I replied, eyes burning. I'm finally being honest. And if that means I have to leave this house, then maybe that tells me everything I need to know about what kind of home this really is. And with that, I went upstairs and started packing. I didn't have much, just a suitcase of clothes, my journal, and my laptop. I called my aunt, the only person who had ever shown me compassion since this all began. She told me I could stay with them. No questions asked. I left that night. No one stopped me. No one even came to the door. It was the most painful walk of my life, down the hallway, past family photos that now felt like lies, past the kitchen where I had once danced as a child, past the living room where I learned how to stay silent. I walked out the front door, and not a single person said goodbye. Living with my aunt and uncle was like stepping into another world. They had their own issues, sure, but there was space to breathe, space to feel. My aunt encouraged me to keep writing. She even connected me with a therapist who helped me unpack years of emotional trauma. For the first time, someone told me, you are not too much. You are enough, just as you are. I cried in her office the first 3 sessions straight, but slowly, I began to heal. And then something unexpected happened. My cousin Zara asked if she could show parts of my journal at her university's mental health awareness week. Anonymously. I hesitated, but something in me whispered, let them see. Let them know they're not alone. So I said yes. A month later, Zara sent me a video of the event. Students stood on stage, reading lines from my journal. Some nights, I wished I could erase myself just to see if anyone would notice I was gone. They said I was being dramatic, but no one ever asked why I was crying in the first place. I learned how to disappear without ever leaving the room. And when the lights came back on, the crowd was silent, not because they didn't care, but because they felt it. Every word. Tears streamed down my face as I watched. My pain had found purpose. But healing isn't linear. And just when I thought I had found peace, another storm hit. Mom texted me. Your Nani is very ill. She's asking for you. I hadn't spoken to my mother in weeks. My stomach twisted reading her message. Nani was the only grandparent I ever felt safe with. She had a quiet strength to her. She never interfered. But you could tell she noticed everything. When I was a child, she'd slip me candy under the table and say, for the sweet one. I didn't hesitate. I went. Walking back into that house was surreal. The walls felt smaller, the air heavier. Fariha passed me in the hall without a glance. Hamza was nowhere to be seen. I found Nani in her room, frail, pale, but smiling when she saw me. My girl, she whispered. I knelt beside her, and she held my hand. I read what you wrote, she said, her voice barely above a breath. I'm proud of you. I choked on my tears. She squeezed my hand. Don't let their shame become your silence. When I left her room, I bumped into Dad. He looked tired, older, worn down. He didn't speak, just stared. I didn't want to hurt anyone, I said softly. I just wanted to be seen. He swallowed hard. You were always seen, Aisha. No, I whispered. I was watched. That's not the same thing. He had no answer. Later that week, Nani passed away. At the funeral, I stood alone, watching everyone mourn a woman who had seen me when no one else had. As people gathered to say their goodbyes, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Hamza. He looked nervous. I read it, he said. I blinked. Read what? The journal, the parts Zara shared. I stiffened. I was angry at first, he admitted. I thought you were just trying to destroy us. But then I realized, I didn't even know you. I never tried to. I didn't know what to say. He looked down. I'm sorry. My throat tightened. It's not just about me. You hurt Fariha too. You hurt each other. You all hurt each other. He nodded. And for once, there was no defense. No excuses, just quiet. That night, I sat alone with my journal. The same one they'd once used to shame me. Now, it sat beside me like an old friend. I flipped to a blank page, and I wrote. They said I was just being dramatic. But now they know. It was never drama. It was damage. It was silence turned into survival. And I'm still here. Still writing. Still healing. The weeks after Nani's funeral were filled with a strange stillness, like something heavy had been lifted from the air, but no one knew what to do with the empty space it left behind. I stayed with my aunt and uncle for another month. During that time, I wrote more than I ever had before. I poured my heart onto page after page, not just about my family, but about what it felt like to carry invisible wounds in a world that expected me to smile through the pain. Writing became more than a coping mechanism. It became my voice. One morning, while sipping chai in the garden, my aunt looked at me over her glasses. Have you ever thought about publishing it? She asked. I laughed at first. Who'd want to read the ramblings of a girl who was too sensitive for her own family? But she didn't laugh. She leaned forward. You're not just a girl with a story, Aisha. You're every girl who's ever been silenced, ever been told to smile instead of speak, ever been made to feel too much or not enough. If your words helped Zara and me, and so many others, why not more? The idea terrified me. It also excited me. A few weeks later, I began turning my journal entries into a manuscript. I didn't edit out the pain. I didn't soften the betrayals. I didn't erase the moments that made me look small or broken, because that was the point. I wasn't broken. I was healing, and people needed to see the whole journey. I titled it, Too Much, a journal from the silent sibling. I submitted it to 3 small publishers with no real expectations. One rejected it within 2 days. Another didn't respond. But the third, they called. Naughty mail called. The woman on the phone, a quiet-voiced editor named Sana, said, I read your manuscript in one sitting. I cried 3 times. We want to publish it. I dropped the phone. Literally. It hit the floor. But Sana was still there, laughing on speaker when I picked it back up. You have a voice, Aisha, she said. And it's time people heard it. The book launched 6 months later. Small release, limited print, no fancy press tour, but it sold out in days. Word of mouth took over. Women, young girls, mothers, therapists, even teachers started sharing quotes from it online. They said I was being dramatic, but they never saw the nights I cried myself into silence. My pain wasn't pretty. It was messy and loud and inconvenient, but it was real. Suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. Readers began writing to me. Messages poured in from around the country and beyond. Some said the book saved their lives. Others said it helped them finally understand their daughters, their sisters, even themselves. And with every message, a little piece of the broken girl inside me began to mend. Then, out of nowhere, something happened I never expected. My mom showed up at my aunt's house. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. I was stunned when I opened the door and saw her standing there, hands clasped. In front of her, eyes rimmed red. I read the book, she said softly. I swallowed hard. You did, she nodded, cover to cover. I didn't know what to say. She stepped inside slowly. I didn't recognize myself at first. I kept thinking, this isn't me. I'm not that cruel. But the more I read, the more I realized I was. My chest tightened. I didn't know how to love you, Aisha, she whispered. Not the way you needed. I was too wrapped up in what I thought a daughter should be, too afraid to face your pain, because it made me see my own. Tears filled my eyes. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want to try, she said, her voice trembling. If you'll let me. I stood there, frozen, unsure whether to cry, run, or scream, but I didn't do any of those things. I simply nodded. We can try, I said. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. Over the following weeks, my mom and I started talking again, not always comfortably, not without setbacks, but honestly. Sometimes we argued, sometimes we cried, but for once, we were facing the pain together, instead of pretending it didn't exist. Fariha, on the other hand, didn't reach out, not for a long time, until one evening, I received a letter. Yes, an actual letter. Inside was a folded piece of paper with her handwriting. I don't know how to talk to you anymore. I feel guilty. I feel jealous. I feel everything I used to say was wrong. Maybe it was. I'm sorry. I'm not ready to say more. But I'm reading your book every page. Feels like you're yelling at me in a way I deserved. Maybe one day we can talk. Until then, no, I'm trying to understand. I cried reading it. Not because it fixed everything, but because it meant something had finally cracked open in her too. The story didn't end there. More media outlets picked up the book. I was invited to speak on a podcast about intergenerational trauma. A school reached out to ask if they could use excerpts in a mental health curriculum. Me, the dramatic one. The girl no one believed. I was becoming a voice for the silent ones. One night, after returning from a university panel, I sat in bed and opened my old leather-bound journal. The one that started it all. The same one that had been stolen, read. Weaponized. I turned to the last page and wrote. They said I was just being dramatic. But that was their fear. Speaking. Because if they admitted my pain was real, they'd have to admit they caused it. But I'm not their fear. I'm not their shame. I am their mirror, and they're finally starting to look. I didn't write the book for revenge. I didn't write it for attention. I wrote it because silence was killing me. And somewhere deep inside, I believed that if I could put my truth into words, maybe, just maybe, someone else would find the courage to do the same. Now, years later, I'm still writing. I'm still healing. And sometimes, yes, I'm still hurting. But I am no longer invisible. No longer silent. No longer just dramatic. I am heard. I am seen. And I will never apologize for that again.